Greetings, fellow Salt Ancestors, and welcome to another video on solo RPGs. Today I want to talk to you about Not a Demon, which is a game by Cesar Capocli that recently won the 2023 Crit Award at Gen Con for Best Solo TTRPG. Now, it actually shared the title of Best Solo TTRPG with another game called The Village Witch. Unfortunately, I don't own it and I haven't played it, so I'm not able to speak to it. But I can speak to, this book in particular, but Cesar Capocli as a designer in general. He is one of my absolute favorite. He always outputs very interesting games, very different mechanic, very different approach to themes. If I can say, is the opposite of mainstream. Both for the way he uses dice, he comes up with very cool ideas of how to interpret dice results. He also comes up with very interesting twists on any given theme. And Not a Demon is a really good example of that. So let me show you what I mean. You are not a demon. You are a guardian spirit, sent to the realm of humans to help them in their mortal experience. Unfortunately, fate has decided that you would manifest as a frightening, shape-shifting creature. Your very essence brings terror to the heart of men. Your actions are seen as abominations, and you are haunted because of your nature. But you have a mission. You embrace your eerie essence, and you use it to aid those feeble mortals, even though you know they are unable to comprehend your ways. They will continue to be scared. They will hunt you down, but they must not drive you away from your purpose. And maybe someday they will be able to see you beyond your ghostly demeanor. So I think that's a fascinating backdrop to a TTRPG, to start off as a hero but take away all the glory of it and appear in those pre-built character sheets as monsters. Different monsters who are all there to help humanity but will never be recognized for the hero that they are. So each of these characters have different characteristics, different control over different domains, different talent options. So let's look here as Zira, observant, courteous, and wise, deeply interested in human spiritual practices and belief, relies on animal attunement and diversion of intent. So, and yes, I am a monster, I write in my books, but getting past that, they are very good at the nature domain, the heart domain, and fold, which is basically the manipulation of time and space. Not as good at controlling matter or chance. The domains are explained a little bit more specifically here, but for the most part it's what you'd expect. So nature speaks to climate, fauna, and flora. Heart to emotion, intuition, and choice. Matters is physics and materiality. Chance is coincidences and fortune. And fold is space and time. So as a spirit, you don't want to be seen because they'll be afraid of you and chase you away. So you have to subtly influence event. Just make someone turn left instead of right. Change events a little bit to bring about an outcome a little baby step at a time. As a player, you can also choose specific talents. There is Spiritum, which speaks to your divine essence. And you can use these as a resource. Well, for many reasons, using a talent, adding a dice to your dice pool when making an action roll. And then as you gain experience point, you can trade them to increase your talents or your domain control. So this is a game in which there's a bit of character progression also. So the way the game starts is once you've chosen your character, chosen talent, you start by choosing a location. There's a little bit of a map here with different location. Actually, I want to read you this part. Just to say how good this game is about reinforcing its theme. It says here, this is their home. This is where humans live, entangled in trouble and beauty, in vice and virtues. Their complete obtuseness as to what happens beyond this portion of land kept them from giving it a proper name. The Isle is just what they call it. A little more here, until the end, it says, the Isle is not your home. You are not welcome, but you are needed. So, the first thing we do is choose a location, and to be original, we'll choose location number 1, which is Gegend. I'm going to go with that. Rough stone buildings, and a fortified wall give the place an austere look. They are deeply invested in road constructions, particularly in an ambitious project to go through the mountain range that crosses the Isle from west to east. Rumors of possible pirate attacks from an unknown land have kept the captain awake at night. So that's just to help you start visualizing the area. And then there's some basically pre-made NPCs also, people of interest, which you can use to build your action plan. So for example, we have Nadam here, who's a healer, speaks in a deep voice, and is richer than they appear. There's Gakov, who's a guard, uses big words, hides a crown relic at home. There is Tsao, a librarian, speaks in riddle, dances in cemeteries under the moonlight. Example. So people to choose from. You can build your own too, you can add people, but this is just an interesting way to get you started thinking about the population. I like that they start with occupation, something about their personalities or style, and a little something that hints to their past, like ashamed of a past crime, hides the relic, leads a revolutionary group, sort of their secret drive maybe. And then each location also comes with a list of trouble. Again, you can roll a die to decide, but I'm gonna say it again. I really think that as a solo player, you owe it to yourself to read them all and choose the one that speaks to you the most. Because, for example, if I were to roll and get something like political disagreements have delayed the arrival of crucial supplies, I wouldn't know what to do with it. Especially with the spirit I chose, right? Because I took one that's really good with manipulation of nature. So I might want to go for something more like Crystal Lily. Seed consumption is on the rise amongst the youth, and gangs fight over the control of its distribution. So I'm reading like a drug that's cultivated. So that's more like up my alley. So I would probably choose that. And then I'm already thinking that's cool because, this city is very austere. Sounds like people, don't have a lot of fun. So maybe people resort to drugs to like escape reality. It's a fortified house, village, I should say. So how does the Crystal Lily get in? It's got to be a smuggling operation to dismantle. So that's easy for me to be going. It builds on the guards. Maybe the healer is involved too. Maybe the healer wants to put an end to this because you can see the aftermath of this consumption. So that's easy for me to sort of ping ideas of these little points here. So I would probably want to keep going off that. So once I have my spirit, I have my location, then I have to come up with my plan. So a plan, like all good plans, comes in 3 steps. So we would want to create a mission clocks for each of these steps. Well, let's go back a second actually. 3 steps. For each of these 3 steps, we need a simple goal. So for example, to deal with the Crystal Lily operation, I might want to say goal number 1, destroy the Crystal Lily crop that's on the outskirts of the city. Number 2, dismantle the smuggling operation. And 3, expose and arrest the leader of the main gang that's been smuggling, for example. These would be my 3 objectives. And I would have to create mission clocks for it. Now, these are a bit like the clocks that I mentioned in my Apothecaria video, which is a time of basically time tracking through actions. So as I would successfully complete action, I could take a segment on my, for example, say that I'm thinking that ruining the Crystal Lily clock is a 4-step process. Then I would succeed in action. I would tick a box and keep going. Once it's completed, I've succeeded. I would move on to objective number 2. Maybe my second one, dismantling the smuggling ring, especially for a spirit that's a bit more nature inclined, might be more complex. Maybe after we've done that, it's really easy to stop the gang leader because we're basically taking down his empire. But maybe it's got some backup. So you can go with your gut for how complex the objective is. Or again, you can roll on a die and let fate decide how many segments your clock has. In addition to a mission clock, you'll need 2 more clocks. You will need, these are not so good clocks. One of them is a doom clock. When you have negative consequences to your action, you may have to take a segment of your doom clock. And unfortunately, when it's failed, it means your mission failed. So in this case, it might mean that I was unable to stop the Crystal Lily from coming in. And so there'll be another full season of addiction going through the city. And I'll have to try again some other time. But in the meantime, who knows how many lives would have been destroyed. And the second one is my exposure clock. So again, people, if they're aware of me, will hate me, they will fear me, they will try to chase me away, they might try to exorcise me. Again, they can't hurt me physically because I'm a spirit, but their hatred can corrupt my essence. So the more I'm exposed, the worse it is for me. I may even have to retreat in the spirit realm to regroup, or I may actually be corrupted by all of this and become the monsters you think I am. Dum dum dum. I'm sorry, I'm joking a bit, but I actually think that's very cool. Again, there's something interesting about the idea that there's a spirit out there that's trying to help, and because of prejudice, they can end up becoming the monsters that we assume they are to start with. That's very interesting to me. Anyway, so we have our clocks, we have our location, now we do our actions. Action rolls. Go here. Basically, we create a dice pool. So I was going to say, do I explain dice pools? So in a lot of cases, you roll a number of dice to resolve an action. For dice pool games, you usually draw different amount of dice to resolve your actions, and then usually the more dice, the better, either because it increases the odds of you getting a positive result or because you have more pips to add together. This particular game actually has to do with you roll as many dice as you're allowed, and you pick the best result. So again, most dice the better. So to create the dice pool, you take 1d6, so one of these, per dots that I have on my domain. So depending on the domain I'm using, the type of spirit, I get a set number of dice. I can spend extra one, spiritum, to get an extra one. I can, if I were not playing with other people, another player could give me a spiritum to roll one. So that doesn't really apply to me as a sole player. And the last one is I can take an extra dice if I say I'll take whatever consequence and I won't try to make an endurance roll, so to resist. So I'll take whatever bad action if I end up with a bad roll at the end. So to go back to my example, I'm trying to mess up with the crops of crystal lily. I'm a very strong nature spirit. I'm thinking, so I get to roll 3 die if I use my nature domain, which seems to make sense. Maybe what I'll do is I'll try to usher a bunch of caterpillar to start munching on those leaves so that the lilies don't flower this year. So hopefully the caterpillar will just be very attracted. So again, it's fairly subtle. Like the people might wonder why the hell all these caterpillars just showed up. But I don't think they will assume spiritual interference. And I get 3 dice out of that. I think it's pretty good. I don't think I want to spend my spiritum because I might need it when I need to use a domain that I'm less good at. So I am going to roll my 3 dice for my caterpillar. And I get a 6, a 4, and a 2. Now I get to keep the best roll, which is obviously a 6. So if I'd gotten 2 6s out of that, I would get a critical success. So I would get my goal with increased effects. So maybe the caterpillar, hatched into butterfly that brought some leaf-eating birds. Okay, I'm stretching here. What this would basically translate to is I could probably, thematically fill in 2 different segments of my mission clock as opposed to 1. Now with a 6, I get to succeed. So I would get my goal without a problem. I would color in 1 segment. Might say that the crops were definitely affected by my caterpillar endeavor. So now we need 3 more things to go my way before the crops are destroyed for this year. If my highest roll had been a 4, I would get a partial success, so I would succeed at the caterpillar, but there would be a consequence. If I'd rolled a 2 as my best, it would be a miss, so I would not get to color in my clock, things would go badly, and I would have a consequence. For a consequence, you can pick or roll from below. So chaos means I advance one of the chaos clock, or I create a new mission clock. So advancing a chaos clock either means my exposure clock or my doom clock. So maybe I would say that I brought in the caterpillar, which brought them to bring in some animal that eats them, but the animal's feces are actually fertilizers. So now we're closer to a full crystal lily harvest. So I would advance my doom clock. Or maybe I was seen, and that could increase my exposure clock. I could also create a new mission clock, which means that basically for example, they started a new field like on the other side of town, and I would have to deal with that too. I would probably not choose that because that adds quite a bit of complication. They could be a cost. So we could gain a danger die to the domain that I used. Now a danger die is kept track of by marking an X. I'll show you here on the domain. See, I had one during my game here. But what that means is next time I roll for the domain that has a danger die, I would add, a die of a different color and roll them together. And this die would cancel any results if it matches value. So in this case, this danger die would have no effect. But it could be really annoying if I run a success, for example, and my danger die would also run a success, then these two would cancel each other, and I would have been left with a 4 as my highest result. So that's what a danger die does. And clout is a taint to my essence. So that means an X on my spiritum track. That's very dangerous because, again, if my spiritum track becomes corrupted completely, then that's when I have to basically do a fade roll, which can lead me to fade away into the spirit land, or again, become a monster. If I don't want to take the consequence, and I didn't add the extra die saying I would not dispute the consequence, I could make an endurance roll. So again, I would pick a domain according to the kind of consequences I take, and then I would try to describe I'm avoiding it. So I was seen, but I'm trying to, bend reality. So maybe they think they saw a shadow as opposed to a monster. So that would probably be a matter roll, which is just 1. It's not real good, but I could try it. And I cannot add anything to this dice pool, so I would only roll the 1 die and see what happens. So on the 5, I would have powered through. I would still take the consequence, but I would gain 1 spiritum. So that's one way to get a spiritum, is to do endurance dice. On the 66, I would be inspired, so I would ignore the consequences and I would gain some more spiritum. Anyway, so as you can see, endurance roll. If you do well, you do well. If you do poorly, however, it's even worse. You take the consequence and you taint an extra spiritum. So it can be a bit of a hit or miss whether you want to do an endurance roll. A lot has to do with the domain you're going to use, obviously. But that's how the game goes. So you would keep repeating actions, again, trying to be creative with your power, trying to be subtle. Maybe I would want to lead the guard to the field. Maybe that would lead him to want to salt it down or burn it or whatever. So there's different ways to tackle it. And this is not a demon. Once I'd be done with this particular quest, I could choose a different location. This game also has a fortune roll. So again, if you're looking for inspiration on your surroundings, on people, you can use, it's actually a very interesting system. I think it's the only place I've ever seen something like this. They give you, axes, negative to positive, caught, hold, shadow, light, stillness, motion. But if you're thinking, okay, so how fast are my caterpillar moving, right? So I could take stillness to motion, roll a die. On the 6, they're going really fast. On the 1, they're not going fast at all. They're practically not moving. And then, I got a 6, so it's full speed ahead. But say that I rolled a 3, they're kind of going average-like. So you can use the closeness to the end of the axis to moderate the roll. I'll give you an idea. Or if you're trying to figure out what the season is, you can use cold for winter, hot for summer, and however close you are to that can give you your shoulder seasons, for example. So it's kind of a neat way to have random tables that are applicable in different setups, and they're really open to interpretation. Again, this game really leaves it open, like nothing in the prompts. The characters, the trouble you're facing are basically set. The author encourages the player to take things literally, figuratively, however it works, to help generate the stories. That's the other thing about Cesar Capacli, actually. He is a very story-focused designer, very much into less about making sure you follow the rules and do everything right, and a lot more about living the experience and using the dice to create unpredictability, to create drama, like highs and lows, but nothing that would ever bring your story to a dead end. And I think that's it for what I wanted to cover for this game. In case you can't tell, I really like it. I really like this designer. I think I've said that about 1,000,000 times now, but it's to the point to actually back him on Patreon because that gives me a free copy, electronic copy of his design as they come out. I think that's fantastic. And yeah, I guess that's it for me today. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you want me to cover more of his game, I have a couple more copies of, I think I have Scraps, I have Land Beyond, I have a lot more electronically. So that's it for now. Have a great evening. Bye.